Welcome to another vegan bake-off. So, what makes a great chocolate chip cookie? To answer this question, we are going to compare recipes by 5 creators, diving deep into the ingredients, methods, and flavor of each cookie. Despite years in the restaurant industry, I have never made a chocolate chip cookie in my life, and today I'm making 5 different recipes for our blind tasters, teams of 2 Michelin restaurants. I am a bit nervous, but I know that at the end of this, both of us are going to walk away with lots of cookie wisdom and an amazing cookie recipe fitted to our individual taste preferences. Let's start by looking at the ingredients. Here in this table, you can see the prices, and in the grand scheme of things, the price per kilo is pretty much the same all across 5 recipes, with the biggest difference being under €1. The ingredients are also pretty similar and very much straightforward in all the recipes, but there are a few nuances that make a big difference. From the dry ingredients, all recipes use flour and salt. We also have salt flakes in all recipes except Fit Green Mind. Rainbow Plant Life is the only one using flax seeds. Then 3 of the recipes use both baking powder and baking soda, while a Rainbow Plant Life only uses baking soda and Fit Green Mind only baking powder. For the wet ingredients, we have water in the Rainbow Plant Life recipe and plant milk in the other 4 recipes. Addicted to Dates also features a bit of plant yogurt. All recipes except Fit Green Mind use vanilla extract. When it comes to sugar, Rainbow Plant Life stands out with the use of dark brown sugar, and Make It Dairy-Free recipe is the only one that only uses one type of sugar, brown sugar. For chocolate, we have 2 teams, bars versus chips. For the fats, we also have 2 teams, creamed butter and browned butter, as well as a wild card, olive oil. These different techniques used to incorporate butter, in my opinion, is the biggest difference in the methods of these 5 recipes. And then, of course, there's the question of aged versus a fresh dough. 2 recipes call for an hour in the fridge. A Rainbow Plant Life recipe calls for at least a day in the fridge. And then we have 2 recipes that can be baked instantly. I started with the Rainbow Plant Life cookie dough. First, I browned the butter and made flax gel. Then, after chopping some chocolate, I mixed dry ingredients in one bowl and wet ingredients in another one. The dry mix needs to be added gradually along with the chocolate at the end. This dough needs to be refrigerated for at least 24 hours before baking. I am also going to be topping all cookies with some chocolate for a beautiful melty look. Going from the hardest one to the one of the easiest recipes, up next we have Fit Green Mind cookie dough. After whisking softened butter with sugar, we can add all other ingredients except chocolate chips. When the dough is mixed, the chocolate chips can go in. This dough only needs an hour in the fridge. The next one, Pick-up Lime's dough, will also only need an hour of resting. We start by browning the butter. After it has cooled down, sugar, plant milk, and vanilla goes in. Then the dry ingredients. And finally, the chopped chocolates. I have to say, it was very easy to make the dough balls and they retained the shape better than the previous recipe. Next, we have one of the two recipes that uses a creamed butter. First, I creamed the butter with sugar. Next, I'm adding milk, vanilla, salt, baking powder, and baking soda. When everything is well mixed, all that is left is to add flour and then chocolate chips. This dough doesn't need to be refrigerated and can be baked right away. However, they do suggest 30 minutes in the fridge for a very hot weather, and that is currently my case. While it is on the softer side, the dough was still very easy to portion and shape. The last dough we are making features olive oil, and I'm curious if my French tasters will be unknowingly drawn to it. First, I mix the wet ingredients, including sugar, then added the dry ingredients followed by chopped chocolate. For the final batch that I gave to the tasters, I used two types of chocolate like suggested in the recipe. 60% and 70% chocolate in equal proportions. I made all the cookie recipes a couple of times before I had a chance to bring them to the restaurants. It was a series of mishaps, like me discovering that my baking powder was inactive after already having made 3 doughs, and then just life happening and me having to freeze all 5 batches. And then, of course, me being the perfectionist that I am, I did make fresh dough for both of the restaurants. But you know, there is a big bright side to all this, because I could experiment and really nail and perfect the way I execute the recipes so I could do justice to the creators. And I also had a mountain of cookie dough that I could experiment with. The only recipe that had a room for error was Addicted to Dates, since I had to adjust the milk according to the dryness of the dough. I tested it 3 times and consistently it needed extra 30 milliliters of plant milk to what was mentioned in the recipe. Someone needs to remind me to not do bake-offs in the middle of heat waves, but here we are. You will watch me sweat profusely as I taste these cookies, but it just is what it is. But on the bright side, the chocolate has stayed nice and melty and perfect, because chocolate does not solidify when it's 40 degrees outside. And I don't have an aircon and I've been baking all day, so yeah. Here we are. I will be pretty shiny throughout this, but bear with me. We're going to get some useful information out of this. Yeah, so I want to start with the cookies that were made using creamed butter, and then go to olive oil and then brown butter, like that, kind of increasing the flavor intensity, because I used the same butter for the cookies with cream butter as for the cookies with brown butter, but of course the butter changes the flavor as soon as you start browning it. I can't do this blind, because this time I'm alone at home and my partner can't be with me in this tasting. So yeah, I can't really hide from myself, because I've made these cookies one too many times to not remember which one is which. I'm going to start with the Make It Dairy-Free cookie. Breaks very easily, doesn't fall apart, stays in 2 parts. The bottom is nice and golden. I picked a cookie that was not very done, but I will also taste a bit more cooked version of the Make It Dairy-Free cookies. It's not very crispy, but I like that. I'm just gonna grab a version that is a bit more cooked. Here is a slightly more cooked version of the Make It Dairy-Free cookie. I want to see if it's a bit crispier. It feels like it's going to be on the chewy side as well. Okay. I like the Make It Dairy-Free cookie. It doesn't have a super complex flavor, but the texture is really pleasant. I'm more of a chewy cookie gal over crunchy. I mean, but if it has both, it's also great. This one is more on the chewy side. I prefer the cookie that is a bit less cooked, but the one with a crunchier shell is also nice. So if you want a bit of crunch, follow the instructions and you can get there by cooking it a bit longer. This one does feel very sweet. It could be the chocolate chips, but if I'm not mistaken, I think it had the highest sugar to mass ratio. It is very sweet. I did account for the sugar that's in the chips and for the sugar that's in the chocolate. The chips have higher sugar content, so not only the cookie itself has more sugar, but thanks to the chips, it is again a bit sweeter than the cookies that I made using chocolate. So next up, I have the Fit Green Mind cookie. It's another cookie that was made using creamed butter and chocolate chips. Also, I think on the sweeter side. Let's break it and see. It's a bit thicker, it's a bit higher than the Make It Dairy-Free cookie. It spreads less. It is very sweet, and I don't feel that much depth of flavor in this one. It doesn't have a vanilla. It's, I think, 8 ingredients. I think it's the easiest one of all the recipes. And I have to say, the flavor is also pretty simple, but sometimes that's exactly what you need. I know exactly what this reminds me of. I think it's a sponge cake, but there might be another word. Okay, so basically my grandma used to bake a lot, and when she was making cakes, you always kind of cut around, like you don't use the whole sheet. Sometimes you do, but if you make a smaller round cake, then you have a lot of leftovers from what gets cut to make the shape. And those leftovers would always be a little crunchy because the edges of the pan crisp the dough more. And these cookies taste kind of like that layer cake, sponge cake, burned bits. While being super sweet and maybe not exactly crispy or crunchy, it is still something that made me smile. So good cookie. Next, I'm going with the olive oil cookie. So we have Addicted to Dates, a chocolate chip cookie. This one is pretty well done, but I've tasted different versions of it. I also made another batch today that was really almost under, so I have it registered in my memory. This one is on the darker side, but they also stay nice and soft and gooey on the inside, even when the edges get crispy, at least from the batches that I've experienced so far. So yeah, let's taste it. It's beautiful. All of them are structurally very good. Like they break perfectly. And yeah, you know what? I think the crunch problem is the weather, because okay, this one is crunchier. The Addicted to Dates cookie is definitely the crunchiest from the 3 that we've tasted so far. And the good news is that all the cookies get affected equally. They're all out here on the same table in the same weather. So if this one has managed to retain the crunch, I think that just means that the crunch was stronger to begin with. That's actually exactly how I remember it from the previous batches that I've tasted. And there were a lot of batches, so yeah. Addicted to Dates cookie is the only one that has two types of chocolate in it, 60% and 70% dark chocolate. And the flavor, I'm going to compare it to the ones that have only one type of chocolate. The chocolate bar at 70%. But when I compare it to the ones with chocolate chips, it is infinitely better. I mean, of course, it depends on what type of chocolate chips you get, but generally in chocolate chips, the quality of the cacao will be lower, or at least there will be less of it. They have more fillers, they have a lot of sugar, sometimes stabilizers, so that they don't melt as much. Because you can see, for example, here, the chocolate chips, they have retained their shape pretty well. And when I touch them, they stay where they're at. Here, the moment I touch it, my finger is covered in chocolate, it oozes, and I mean, of course, again, it is a super hot, but even with this heat, you can see that the chocolate chips don't melt or don't melt as well. If you prefer something messy and gooey, yeah, go for bars or febs. And then chips are a great option if you want to keep the hands a bit cleaner while eating. When it comes to the flavor, do I feel the olive oil in this one? No, but it does have a different depth. I definitely prefer it way over a creamed butter. Of course, there's a chance that I have some sort of placebo effect because I love olive oil so much. I'm drawn to this cookie, but it is just so much more complex in flavor. And it has the different textures. I'll note that it is very chewy, but it is also super crunchy on the edges. Next, I have two cookies that use brown butter. But they are two very different cookies. The main difference here is the depth of color in these cookies. That's the first thing I notice. And that's because this one, Rainbow Plant Life Cookie, is the only one that uses dark brown sugar. Here we have a combination of white sugar and brown sugar, but not dark brown sugar. So I think I'm going to start with this one and then leave the Rainbow Plant Life Cookie for last, because I think the Rainbow Plant Life Cookie is going to have the deepest and most concentrated flavor. And yeah, I want to start with this one. Let's break it. Yeah, the chocolate is still stretching nicely. I find this one actually has similarities with the one with olive oil. Texture-wise, they kind of come from the same family. They have the crunchy edges and then the gooey center, but it's different. It's giving a little bit of marzipan, I think. And this one has a shiny, crinkly top and very soft and nice and gooey middle, as well as crunchy sides. The Pickup Limes one has very nice flavor. It is also crunchy and also soft in the middle. There is a contrast in both of these cookies that I really appreciate. For some reason, the Pickup Limes cookie seems a bit sweeter, even though I think it has less sugar. I think the bitterness of the two different chocolates, as well as the olive oil, everything together. I really like the olive oil cookie. It's a bit less crumbly. It doesn't crumble as much. It's softer at the same time being crunchy on the outside. It depends on the batch. It's very interesting because with the previous batch, I preferred the Pickup Limes cookie over this one, and now, or maybe it's just a day, but yeah, today I'm feeling the Addicted to Dates cookie. It is really good. On to the last cookie. I have the Rainbow Plant Life cookie. Visually, I think it's stunning. It's definitely the one I would reach for in a cafe. Not having tasted, just from the visual, I mean, they are just beautiful. All of these were shaped with a little, it's not a cookie cutter, it's more like a mold, but you can use a cup, a bowl, whatever, just to shape them. So that's why the pretty round shape. It is also more rigid and crinkly on top because of the shaping, because it kind of pushes the edges inwards, crinkling the top a bit. That's very nice. Yeah, all of them break super nicely. Let's see. This one is so good. It's not just the looks, you guys. For the Rainbow Plant Life cookie, I only have good words. It is a brilliant, brilliant cookie. It tastes exactly like taffy candy, minus the hazelnut. Toffee, taffy. Again, I googled it and I forgot, but basically the Rainbow Plant Life cookie really stands out with its flavor. I think it's the dark sugar that brings the molasses into the picture, and it is just giving toffee and caramel and all good things. Also, the texture is just super chewy, but there is the crunch on the outside as well as the top is pretty crunchy and nice, and there's a very good contrast between the crunch and the chew. There's the perfect ratio of chocolate. It's super chocolatey. It's not very sweet. If I'm not mistaken, the sugar to mass ratio in this cookie is the lowest, yet it has one of the richest, deepest flavors. So there you go. There are some notes of rye, notes of molasses, very, very good. But I still like these two as well. To summarize my tasting experience, I'm not a fan of chocolate chips and I don't like creamed butter as a base for cookies. So that leaves me with olive oil and brown butter. I really like the olive oil cookie. It was incredible, and that's the cookie that I'll probably be making the most for myself at home because I always have olive oil. Vegan butter, not so much maybe. Then when it comes to the brown butter cookies, I think they just taste, you know, it's a level up. It tastes much better for my palate, but they are two very different cookies. One, Pickup Limes cookie, is giving marzipan, and then when I look at the Rainbow Plant Life cookie, already from the color alone and especially from the flavor, it's really giving toffee, and yeah, they are both brown butter cookies, but they are very different brown butter cookies. I love both, but if I have to choose, I would probably make Pickup Limes cookie when I need a crowd pleaser for, you know, more people, and especially if it needs to travel, if it needs to be stored, held in Tupperware. But this cookie I would make for a fancy dinner at home. I would bake this to impress because the flavor is super complex, it's delicious, and it looks stunning. But this one, yeah, it's an absolute crowd pleaser and definitely stores better than the Rainbow Plant Life cookie, which is, in my opinion, the best when it is fresh, just freshly cooled and ready to be devoured. Before getting into the scores from both restaurants, let's look at some cookie metrics. While all cookies had both crunchy and chewy side to them, somehow Rainbow Plant Life gets the top score in both crunchiness and chewiness. I think it's due to the size of the cookie, and Nisha talks about it in her recipe, because when a cookie is bigger, the sides have time to get crunchy while the middle stays still nice and gooey. So in that way, this cookie has the best of both worlds. According to my tests, all cookie doughs benefited from being in the fridge, even the ones that are not meant to be kept in the fridge, but I think it might have something to do with the weather that I'm having here. When it comes to the size of the cookies, I prefer slightly bigger ones because the uneven cooking gives a nice contrast between the gooey, chewy and the crunchy side of the cookie. And this is why we also saw Rainbow Plant Life on the top of both charts, chewiness and crunchiness. In general, I prefer using chocolate bars if the other option is chocolate chips, but if I can choose, my absolute favorite is chocolate fèves. I did try using fèves and tested them in a Rainbow Plant Life recipe. Not the batch that went to the tasters, but the one that I just had at home. And I have to say, I really liked it. Chocolate fèves usually have slightly higher cacao butter content, so they are more smooth and meltier, maybe. They stay melty for longer. But it is a question of individual taste because, for example, Nisha tested it in her blog. She wrote about it and she prefers chocolate bars, so it is really up to you. But if you get a chance, test the difference and see what you like. The chocolate you choose also impacts the sugar content, but in this case, the biggest difference between the sugar to mass ratios in these cookies is 6%, which is still something, but generally speaking, yes, all of these are very sweet. The first restaurant took their task very seriously, and I have votes ranking all 5 cookies, so I decided to go with a point system. I'm going to be giving 30 points for each first place the cookie gets, and 20 points for second and 10 for third. Like that we can count and see who the winner is. Pickup Lime's recipe turned out to be the crowd pleaser, followed closely by Rainbow Plant Life and Addicted to Dates. The chef of the restaurant was on the same page as majority of his team. He absolutely loved Pickup Lime's cookie, so much so that he almost ate the whole batch of Pickup Lime's cookies that I had with the faulty baking powder. I didn't give them for the tasting, but since he's my partner and we live together, he devoured those cookies. So one thing to be said about Pickup Limes, the next day they taste like the best box cookie you've ever had. And even when they completely dry out, when they don't have the gooiness anymore, when they're fully a dry cookie, yes, they are quite hard, but at the same time, super delicious, especially if you have a glass of milk. While I personally prefer Rainbow Plant Life cookie, I see how Pickup Lime's cookie is more approachable while still being complex and delicious in its flavor. And yeah, that makes it an absolute banger. The other restaurant had a slightly different tasting experience. Their main fridge had given out the night before I brought over the cookies, so they treated them more like a pick-me-up and less like a tasting. But one thing was confirmed. They had the same favorite as the other restaurant, both the team and the chef. So yes, Pickup Lime's cookie really is a crowd pleaser. And the best part, people were saying that they would pay money for these cookies, that they would buy them if they were available. And that's such an awesome compliment coming from a team of a Michelin star restaurant. My last vegan bake-off got me monetized on YouTube, and I have you guys to thank for it. It is such an absolute dream to be able to geek out like this about things I love and have such an amazing community behind me. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You can always support me by sharing, subscribing, and liking the video, and I would absolutely love to hear from you in the comments what you would like me to do next, what recipes I could test, and I'll talk to you in the comments and see you in the next one. Bye!